Hello and Happy New Year. Welcome to first episode of Andy Walks With Me. We're going through Matthew chapter 1 here, and I guess I just want to talk about the whole book really quickly. We call this the book of Matthew, but that's not actually the name. When Matthew sat down to write this, he didn't say, I think I'll just call it after myself. When he wrote it, he said, I am writing a book, and it's called The Gospel of Jesus Christ. And that meant something to the people that would have read it originally. If something was a gospel, that was a term that they would use for, I'll give you a scenario. So let's say that Caesar Augustus went out and just conquered this new area, and after he conquered it, he would probably send somebody, probably with a funny hat, over there with a scroll, and he would open up the scroll and he would say, this is the gospel of Caesar Augustus, and he has conquered your nation and now you are all Romans, so rejoice. The word gospel means good news, so it was news going around in the same way that news goes around today, you know, with people bringing around scrolls. But it usually was a form of just kind of telling people, like, this is the government that you're a part of now. And I believe they would send it out, you know, to other places in Rome. They would say, you know, Caesar Augustus has conquered this place and now they're Romans with us. So Matthew sits down and he's writing this, and he's saying, I need to tell people about this new kingdom that they can be a part of. And so, and it's not like any other kingdom you've ever seen, but it is the only true kingdom, and it's a kingdom never bound, and the king is Jesus. And that's actually a major point that Matthew is trying to make in this gospel, is that Jesus is the king of all. He is the coming Messiah. He is the one that all the prophecies have spoke about. We'll talk about that in the chapters to come. How many prophecies all point to Jesus. It's truly overwhelming. But he starts off his gospel by giving something that they used as kind of a resume back in the day. He gave a genealogy, and people would give genealogies saying, this is who I am, you know, I'm the son of this person, and the son of this person, and the son of this person. And you would make your family name great by putting these great figures in it. And this genealogy is no exception as far as putting people that can be understood by the people reading it. To go through, I'm struggling going through this chapter, because to give you the background of the genealogy of Jesus in Matthew is to basically give a history of the entire Old Testament. It goes through every story, and these stories, every person that you would read, you would say, oh my gosh, Jesus is the descendant of him. He's the descendant of him. And it's so rich. The genealogy, most people glaze over it. It is so rich. If you just go into the stories and see who he is highlighting. Because he didn't put everybody in the genealogy. He made it in an interesting way. It says at the end of the genealogy, it said, there's 14 generations from here to here. There's 14 generations from here to here, and there's 14 generations from here to here. And what Matthew is doing there is he is saying, he's basically making, not a play on words, but he's making a point. And his point is that Jesus is the son of David. And there are two major prophecies that are not ambiguous, that say that the coming Messiah will be the king like David. He will be the first major king. He will be the king of the holy people and everything that God was creating through the Israelites. He's saying this king will be like David in that way, the greatest king ever. But he'll be even more so. And so what he does is he gives this genealogy. And the most interesting thing about it is that the people that he puts in there are not perfect people. In fact, almost everybody in there is some sort of moral deviant. And the most interesting thing about it is that he puts in 4 women. And women do not go in genealogies. It's just not something that people do, but Matthew puts them in there. I think God told Matthew to put these women in the genealogy because he's showing something very, very clear. All the women that he puts in 4 women. All of them are in some way moral or ethical outsiders, and they're also ethnic outsiders. It starts with Tamar. I forget exactly where she's from, but she was not an Israelite. She married one of Judah's sons, and it was known that there was going to be a Messiah. That is ever since, you know, Adam and Eve, that there's going to be this Messiah, and they knew it was going to come through Judah. And so Judah had one of these sons, and the sons married this outsider, this woman from another nation, and he ended up dying. And then, as was the custom in the time, gave him to his brother, and he died. And then he was afraid to give him to the other brother, and so she ends up dressing up like a prostitute and seducing her own father-in-law. And then the son that came from that ended up becoming the next heir. And so, just kind of a weird story. Like, why would God choose him? Why would God choose the imperfect things to make his holy line? But then you go down the story, and the next thing is Tamar. Tamar was a prostitute from Jericho, and she ended up stepping out in faith, kind of like Tamar did, stepping out in faith and then hiding a bunch of the Israelites when they were looking at Jericho. And she ended up saving a bunch of them, and she said, you know, I stepped out in faith, and maybe because of my faith you will save me and my whole family when the destruction of Jericho comes, because I feel like your God is telling me that Jericho is going to be destroyed. And so this harlot ends up, the Bible says harlot, I don't call her that, but she ends up saving her and her whole family and then marrying an Israelite. So she was this moral outsider, she was an ethnic outsider, and she was brought in. And then Ruth was a Moabite, people that were descended from an incestuous relationship, and she came over, you know, she was married to an Israelite for a little bit, and then he ended up dying, and God saved her, and then she became the great grandmother of David. And then David had many wives, and then he took somebody else's wife. He took Bathsheba, and they don't mention Bathsheba by name. She was the wife of Uriah the Hittite. So here was a woman kind of on the outside ethnically because she was married to a Hittite and who had a crazy relationship with King David. And then the line of succession came from that relationship, from that affair that happened. So you have all these stories where you have ethnic outsiders and moral outsiders, and God is seeing them stepping out in faith and trusting in God, and then he redeems them. So Matthew is making a point that this gospel is not just for the men, and it's not just for the Israelites. you know, it's for women, and it's not just for perfect women or perfect men. It's for imperfect men and women, because that's all there are. And it's not just for the Jews, it's for everyone in the whole world. So he's saying this is the gospel of everyone in the whole world. And so that's how he starts it. And you know, he mentions that Mary was a virgin, and she was also mentioned in the genealogy, but so she ends up marrying Joseph, and he was not, I'm sure he wasn't happy about how this all came about, but it says in this chapter that a dream came to him saying it's all right to marry Mary, and you should name your child Jesus. And it must have been more than a dream, because if I was in that situation and I had a dream, I would have been like, well, that would have been nice, you know, I'm not going to pay much attention to it. But there are a couple times in this first couple of chapters where someone is given a dream and it shakes them. So God is clearly speaking to Joseph and saying, take this baby on as your own. And because of Joseph, he was given the right to be called the king. Jesus was, and Mary was also from the line of David, but that's the point that's being made in this section here. So I think I've gone on for too long, but that is an introduction, Matthew chapter 1.